So hi, everyone. I'm Frida Polli, Dr. Frida Polli. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Pymetrics. Pymetrics uses behavioral data, ethically designed AI to match people to their ideal jobs. And we do this all by selling enterprise software, which some of the people in the room are very valued clients of ours. And my background is I came from an academic institution. I spent 10 years at Harvard and MIT studying cognitive neuroscience, realized it was really cool research that we were doing, didn't have much application in the real world, transitioned out of academia through an MBA program at Harvard, saw recruiting there for the first time in a while, thought to myself, wow, this is really pretty outdated, hasn't changed much, and we could do a lot better. And that's how the idea for Pymetrics came to be. And fast forward now, we have about 100 plus enterprise clients globally that use our solution to evaluate people based on their potential rather than their pedigree. So I always say if you want to make a racist, sexist, elitist, or ageist decision, you should have a person read a resume because unfortunately that's pretty much what's going to happen. And I'll include myself in that. I'm not pointing fingers. Unfortunately, every study that's ever been done of resume review has shown that. And so I think we need to move beyond a world where we are evaluating people based on a piece of paper that they filled out. And I became a skeptic of the resume when to transition from a scientist where you have a 50-page academic CV with every publication you've ever done in the world to a business school student where your resume has to fit onto one page and be very pithy. And so Frida Polli lost a lot of resume weight when she went to business school, and I just thought to myself, like, how can this document really reflect me as a person if it used to be 50 pages and now it's one page? Like, that was kind of the aha moment for me as to what could potentially be wrong with a resume. So I really think that we've created a system that can evaluate people based on their potential, and there's a huge need for that right now in the world because I think we're transitioning into a phase of life where what you have done may become far less relevant than what you can do for a variety of different reasons. And I think that we need to be evaluating people based on what they can do because it will eliminate a lot of the sort of structural problems that we have with the workforce today. So that was a long introduction, so thank you for listening, and happy to have a conversation.
Okay, thank you. So my question was, are there any developing standards relating to, I'll call it the minimum predictive validity that needs to be established in order to use systematized hiring selection? Then relatedly, are there any standards relating to external validation or auditing accountability tools that can be used by third parties to validate those standards?
Do you want to?
I mean, so I am not aware of any agreed upon standards. We at Pymetrics are firm believers in transparency. So we have a technical manual that we offer to anybody who's interested in using our solution, where we do speak to the predictive validity of our tool. We've also open sourced our auditing techniques. So we audit all of one of the things that Tomas, I think, hit on really well is that AI can be either a force for good or bad, and it really depends on its design. And therefore, we feel very strongly that AI needs to be ethically designed, and we've open sourced our tools for doing that, including a way that we can audit it. So I don't know of any currently agreed upon standards for these types of things. I do believe that more and more they should exist. And I would also like to just go back to what Tomas said, which is, do we have those standards now for humans, right? I mean, right now, SHRM reports that the failure rate for first-year hires is 50%. So essentially, it's a chance. So I do believe we should have those standards. However, I don't think that we're living in a world where those exist for the humans that are
Yeah, I'd say they mostly don't exist, especially the first one it's almost like a really weird question because it's so obvious and no one asks that question. Like, do you need to have a certain level of accuracy? There's no minimum level of accuracy that is prescribed. And if there were, I think it would be very hard to impose it. That's pretty deregulated. So if an organization actually wants to select the worst possible candidates, the assumption is it will self-destroy and then be outperformed by its competitors. Why is company X using this tool, which is not as accurate as that tool? I mean, that's consultants come in and try to sell one solution over another. And I think fundamentally what's wrong today is that the average user doesn't have the knowledge or patience to actually scrutinize whatever information is presented. We were just talking about this over lunch. There are so many claims that are just fantasy claims, right? So if somebody comes and tells you this predicts whatever with 98% of accuracy, you got to laugh, right? It's just not going to happen. But then people remember that or see that, and then somebody's saying, this is 65 or 70% accurate. Say, okay, this seems like an inferior product. But fundamentally, I think the issue is not different tools or methods competing against themselves, but anything that is database competing against intuition. People love their intuition, especially when they have none. Right? There are a lot of people who are intuitive because they have expertise, and then their intuition has become more data-driven. If you do the same thing all the time and you're very experienced, you will have some biases, but at least your intuition is okay, and it's quite data-driven. But for each and one of those individuals, there are many who think they're really intuitive, and they are sometimes worse than flipping a coin, which is difficult, right? So you underperform vis-a-vis the random rate or the arbitrage. So you get it wrong most of the time.
But there was an interesting Nature paper that just came out, sort of aggregating across all of the different, publicly available sources where people had sort of spoken to the ethics that should underpin AI. So it's a slightly different question than what the audience member is asking, but I do think more and more we're seeing collective standards that are being hopefully agreed upon. And I think that it's necessary because I think we are entering an age where AI, whether we like it or not, is going to be used in a lot more of these decisions. And I do think that we have to collectively agree upon what, sort of good standards of AI are. And I think that people that have, Stuart Russell, who's kind of like, somebody who's very well known in the field, and others have really come out for a set of principles. They call it beneficial AI. There's lots of different buzzwords out there, ethical AI, responsible AI, but I think that we're all coalescing around this idea that not only should it be predictive, but it should also have a set of standards applied to it, including lack of bias and whatnot. And I think these things will be available in short order. That's my opinion in any case. So
if I can jump in.
Yeah.
So this morning, when I kicked this off, I asked who here was enrolled in an organization, in an enterprise, and I would say roughly 62.38, roughly 2/3 of the people raised their hands. So my question to you all who raised your hand this morning, or if you're new, if you're in an enterprise, who's looking at a people-related technology to secure a new one over the next 12 months or so? Show of hands. So. Okay, and who here among you, and this could be a different group, who among you has an ethics charter? Something to govern, how things are done. So very, very few. So, okay, a bunch of shy arms kind of have.
Next one is, who here has a moral compass?
Right. So we're going at, and Stacia Gar's going to talk a little bit about this when she gets up in a little bit, is there's all these, there's people analytics technologies, and there's these talent-related technologies that now are able to do machine learning and AIs. So it begs a couple of questions. Number one, I'm going to reframe it. What are some of the characteristics of leadership teams that are securing these technologies, and what are they not doing that they should be doing to make sure that they're used responsibly and productively?
Yeah, so I think,
You can answer within 20 minutes. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
That's a big question.
No, I think there are two types of users or buyers, if you like, or adopters. There's the one who kind of, it looks good, it looks cool, it looks groovy, and they don't think about it a lot, and they buy it like, they buy something without, it's almost like an emotional or impulsive reaction. And then you have, a lot of smart adopters and buyers. There's a great book that I always recommend on the subject of AI called Prediction Machines by the guys from Rodman School of Business, the University of Toronto. They were doing AI before it was popular. They basically say, especially in HR, AI is cheaper prediction. But it has huge implications, because what that means is that we need to redefine or reframe human judgment as the ability to work out what to do with a prediction. So imagine that you have AI and humans cooperating. AI provides the data, but the humans need to be able to structure their problems as prediction problems. If I hire more of this, then this will happen. And guess what? If it didn't, I'm wrong, I reframe. And so you almost have, leaders have to think like scientists and have falsifiable hypotheses that AI helps them test, because that's a very powerful device for capturing and processing data. So what's the proportion of people that I see in each of these two camps? Well, I haven't seen too many in the savvy camps, but I think there is a lot, and they're hopefully growing. And HR professionals in general, much like in the 90s, they were under huge pressure to not become administrators and focus on the tactical side of HR and become, more psychologists and understand talent management, leadership potential. Now they have to understand the basics of AI, machine learning, data science, and technology, because otherwise their jobs, they won't be able to perform and influence the leaders so that they actually become more data-driven.
Yeah.
And Frida, before you respond, I just want to carry off of what Tomas was saying there, because if you two walked into a room, I don't know about any of you, I'm buying what you're selling. I'm also aware that I might have 10 other people, maybe not at your level, but come in and also sell me stuff that, AI is great, predict this, and I'm not disciplined enough or don't have the fortitude to say, no, wait a minute, that's not okay, given the culture I want to create, given the trust that we want to build in the organization. So how would you coach us in a way to influence upwards, and so we can make good decisions, not only amongst ourselves, but influence a leadership team in a positive way? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, so I actually think I'm going to give a lot of credit to, the field. I think that, in the 5 years that I've been doing this, I think people have really advanced their understanding, their knowledge. I think HR professionals have become way more educated, knowledgeable, whatever you want to call it in terms of solutions. I think to Tomas's point, I think they are skeptical when the claims seem just, outlandish. And I think, back to your question of what is it that I think makes for, a buyer that, or somebody that's exhibiting the type of leadership you would want to see. I mean, I think, first of all, I think it's really helpful to partner with whatever solution providers you're engaging with, because I think you really need to treat them as a partner, not as I'm going to hold you at arm's length. It's really a collaborative effort. AI gets better over time. That's not just true in HR, it's just true in general, because it learns and so on, and you really have to engage upon this as a collaborative process. I also think that there's some level of humility that we all have to bring to this and say, we don't know what we don't know. We're going to experiment. We're going to learn as we go along. And I actually think that HR does a really good job of all of those things, of sort of taking this attitude of partnership and learning, at least from what I can see. I think, so I'm actually very optimistic that this type of a collaborative partnership will move the field of HR into a place where I think, quite frankly, whenever you speak to somebody in the field, they want to have a more strategic role in the organization. I don't want to be a glorified resume reader. That's not what I went to college for, right? I want to be involved. I want a seat at the table, and now you're being empowered to do that in a way that wasn't possible before. And I personally see that there is a big embrace. I think what leads to people being fearful is, again, am I going to make a mistake? Am I going to partner with the wrong solution? I'm not smart enough to understand whether it's the right solution. Fear of sort of making the wrong decision. And all I would say is that I think there is some risk involved, but I think that it always, from what we've seen, always leads to an outcome where the types of the types of results that people want to see, they really do happen. You do get a more diverse workforce. You do get a better candidate experience. You are going to have a more efficient process. You are going to get a better quality of hire. That's just a fact. And if we look around, if we look at what AI has done in the world, if you think about Netflix, for example, is one of my favorite analogies. Like, think about there was someone earlier today talking about this. Think about what Blockbuster used to be like, and now we have Netflix. Like, would anyone ever go back to Blockbuster? No, there's only 10 stores left in the US, right? And why is that? Because Netflix has used AI to just make that process way better. And on top of that, we have discovered movies that we never would have before. And the candidate experience is so much better. That's the power of what we can do, I think, with AI in HR. And it's extremely exciting, I think. And again, with the values of sort of learning, partnership, humility, that we're not going to know everything we need to know up front, I think we can really co-evolve into a place where those things are possible. So,
and if I can just add, I do think that in the recruitment or staffing kind of field, there's definitely a more sophisticated buyer, and people ask you ahead of buying anything, any service or tool, why should I believe you? Show me, prove to me that you can find it. Even then, it's not as easy as it should be to demonstrate that, because when you ask for actual performance data that would perfect the models and enhance predictive power beyond what most people could even imagine or expect, we still live in a world where most employees, especially skilled employees, don't have robust, reliable performance data. Furthermore, if you help them implement that, it would reveal an uncomfortable gap between the contributors and those who succeed, right? So imagine if your sales pitch is, you're not meritocratic. Politics determines success. It's not a very effective sales pitch, right? Unless you have a masochist buyer who is like, oh yeah, show me more. Yeah. So whereas in other areas like learning, training, coaching, you can come up with the best methodology, the best process, the best solution, but when you want to show ROI, if they're not tracking how much people improve, because your last point was better candidates, show me, that's a big limitation. The absence of reliable, valid performance metrics is the elephant in the room, and it's really the biggest barrier to making analytics or AI as useful as it is.
Yeah, and I would also just like to add, hiring is hard, right? I mean, let's just start with that, right? It's really difficult. And on top of that, you got to add, there's all these legal and compliance issues. And, then there's data privacy. I mean, it's challenging, right? And so you guys, everyone here in the room has a really hard job. And I think we can't underestimate that. I think it's a lot harder to do that than to train an algorithm to whether this is a cat versus a dog, right? I mean, so I think we need to really emphasize the fact that this problem has been challenging to solve because it's a really hard problem, and not underestimate that, and give people credit for how far we've.
On the upside, if you get it wrong, you won't be eaten or disappear. So there's the bright side.
Right.
I got a chill because I was having that as a reflection that you two are obviously extremely well educated and accomplished, but you're wrestling with basic questions that we all are wrestling with. And one of the other things that I will say is with a panel, it is always frustrating, particularly with the likes of you two, where we're just warming up and we can talk all day. Unfortunately, we can't, but I don't want to just cut you all off.
Well, in fact, we're driving back together, so we have 2 hours to go where we can do like comedians in cars or something and broadcast it. I'm sure it will go viral. Talking about the real technical stuff.
In the world, yes, but no one else.
So any parting thoughts? Just a minute or so.
No, I mean, I'd just love to hear any additional, kind of what's resonated, what, thoughts people have, questions, remaining questions. Anyone?
I mean, mine is always that I think, people analytics started maybe mostly as a kind of marketing, fad. It was an attempt to rebrand HR or talent management and make it cool. And it started in the West Coast in Silicon Valley by engineers who maybe on the one hand thought that you can have an engineering mindset to thinking about people problems, which is basically what scientific management was 100 years ago, but actually in most instances are quite skeptical that there is a science to managing people. They think, no, it's human. So actually they're some of the most intuitive people that I've met in terms of managing others. Even though it may have started as a marketing fad, it's real, and I think it's a great time to be doing anything in the talent or HR space because the field is gaining not just credibility but also effectiveness, and it matters whether we can deal with people in the right way and improve their work experience and make the world more meritocratic. I think it's no small feat.
Yeah, and since there were no questions, the thing I'd like to leave the audience with is I think that it's not just about hiring. We limit it to hiring or promotion. I mean, it's people's lives. It's like people's livelihood, right? I mean, having a good job is a lifeline to having an existence on this planet. And I think when we think about these things, when we think about making this, less biased, more socioeconomically inclusive, more inclusive towards people with neurodiversity, we're changing the world. I mean, I know I'm sounding like the stereotypical, entrepreneur at this point, but I really do believe that, if done well, we can actually have an impact that goes way beyond, hiring at company A, B, or C, or promotion at, whatever it is. It's really just an impact that we can have that is far, far more global. And I think, we should all be excited about that possibility and just really the transformative nature that, AI and data can have on really making the world a better, better and fairer place. So.
With fewer incompetent men in charge.
And more women unicorns, yeah. That's right.
Well, thank you both. You both were awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.